Hi, and welcome to Rebohle Risk Management's YouTube channel. My name is Ryan, and today I'm going to be sharing with you key information on the different type of excesses. So we're going to dive deep into understanding what type of excess values are there, as well as understanding what type of excess structures are there. But please note that even though this excesses might be applicable to your long-term type of insurance, this tutorial is mainly designed for the short-term insurance type of excesses. So if ever you need more information on the other side, please be tuned in where we design another video for the excesses that speaks to the long term. But tune in, and please don't forget to subscribe and also follow us. Let's start now with a presentation where I'm going to sharing with you the different type of excesses. So we've got two key different type of excesses, mainly the fixed excess and the percentage excess. The fixed excess speaks to the excess where there's a specific fixed rand value that you need to pay. So it could be a stipulated amount of any value, but it's a rand value, and also it's the same amount that is payable throughout the life of your insurance policy. It does not change, it does not fluctuate because of it's a fixed one. And then on the other hand, well, the percentage excess speaks to a percentage that is calculated based on a specific amount. And in many cases, that's likely based on the claims value. So they will say your excess is X percentage of your claims value. It may happen sometimes that you find an insurer that says your excess is based on the sum insured, but in many cases, your excess is going to be based on the value of your claim itself. Because in many cases, the claims value might not be as equal as to the total sum insured, because of you might not all the time claim up to the total loss rather. And then on the other hand, also it often includes a specific minimum. So a specific minimum meaning that they will give you a specific percentage as your excess percentage of your claim. However, even despite of that specific percentage, they might stipulate that you will never ever pay less than, and then they put a minimum. So that's the difference between the percentage excesses as well as the fixed excess. Simple example, and get into details and trying to understand. Let's say, for example, we have an item, say such as a car, at a value of say 250,000 rand. It happens the car gets in an accident. It's not a total loss because it's on the write-off. Therefore, your loss won't be 250,000. Instead, let's say maybe it's 80,000 rand as an example. When it comes to fixed excess, this is how it will apply. An example might be that your fixed excess is a value of 7,000 rand, for an example. So this means that when you process a claim, you're only going to pay 7,000 rand. Nothing less, nothing more. It's fixed. It's been pre-agreed. It's going to be 7,000 rand. That's how straightforward the fixed excess is. Whereas on the other hand, then when it comes to percentage, they might give you a specific certain amount of percentage that you're going to pay, and a specific amount. For example, here we said a percentage excess is 10% of your claim, minimum 6,000 rand. This means that the lowest you could ever pay is 6,000 rand, despite of the percentage or despite of the size or the value of the loss. You'll never ever pay less than 6,000 rand. So you're either going to pay 10% or 6,000 rand, whichever is the highest. So let's make an example on the very same loss of 80,000 rand. This means that you will pay 10% of that 80,000 rand, which is the loss. And then that means your excess will be 8,000 rand. On the other hand, then let's look at it in a different way, whereby the amount or the claims value is a little bit lesser. So in that case, let's make an example of 40,000 rand. Let's say your loss is 40,000 rand. Applying the very same excess and the same minimum under the percentage excess, this means that your excess will be 10,000 of 40,000, 10% rather of 40,000, which is the loss, which is equal to 4,000 rand. However, the excess that will be due will be 6,000 rand, because you will never ever pay less than 6,000 rand, because of the greatest one here is the minimum. Let's look at the one silly example where other insurers say your excess is not a percentage of a claim, but rather it's a percentage of the total sum insured. It does happen, but particularly when it comes to fleet type of accounts, when it comes to your commercial vehicles, there are insurers that can apply that type of excess. So let's say, for example, now they say your excess is now a percentage based, but based on the sum insured instead of being based on the claims value. So this means that now your excess, if you can apply the very same example, your excess of 10% will be 10% of the sum insured of that 250,000 rand, minimum 6,000 rand. So this means then you will be paying about 25,000 rand, because instead of applying this to that, which is the claims value, some insurers apply this to that. So please be careful when selecting or reading your policy schedule before you accept that. Is it 10% of the sum insured, or is it 10% of the claims value, whatever percentage it may be? This is just for an example. So those are the two types of excess values. Now that we understand the excess values, let's look at the type of excess conditions. There are various types of excess conditions. However, before we jump into that, I need you to understand that the type of excess values, which is a percentage and the fixed, apply exactly to all the type of excess condition there is. There's a basic excess, there's an additional excess, and there's a punitive excess. You might hear the word punitive and additional interchangeably, but I'll explain that later. But as we have said earlier, that all these excess values, meaning the percentage and the fixed excess, apply to all this type of excess conditions. But let's first explain. A basic excess is your standard amount that you need to pay for whatever loss. So that applies to whatever type of condition. And then it normally has no specific condition to trigger it. As long as there's a loss which is covered, then you pay the basic excess. So let's make an example and go back to the very same example of 80,000 rand just to understand this basic excess quite easier. Let's say you have an 80,000 rand loss and then you're under basic excess. Therefore, it means if ever your excess from the percentage side of things is 10%, or it's 7,000 rand fixed from the fixed side of, depending on which excess value do you have. I'll just make example of both, but still under basic excess. This means your excess will be 7,000 rand. Simple and straightforward, just like that. Or if it's 10%, this means that your excess will be 8,000 rand, because of it will be 10% of the loss. That makes it 8,000 rand. That's exactly what basic excess means. Additional excess, though, it's an excess that they apply on top of or in addition to your basic excess. So that means that you're paying over and above. And the reason they would add additional excesses is because of they would add it because of it normally applies to clause such as where extensions are. And I'll speak a little bit more on extensions a bit later, but it's normally triggered by irregular incidents. So incidents that will normally not happen in a specific condition, but they'll happen under unusual conditions. And I can make a simple example where they said if it happens that you claim within the first 3 months of inception of your policy, then there will be an additional excess of 3,000 rand. Sometimes they might say if it happens that your vehicle was driven by someone other than you, and that someone has a license that is lesser or not older than 3 years old, then there will be additional excess that you need to pay. So meaning under any accident, you'll pay your basic excess and you'll pay your additional excess. Let's make a simple example again on using the very same claims value of 80,000 rand. So let's say you have 80,000 rand, and then we're going to make examples on both you as a fixed excess option taker, as well as the percentage excess option taker. And it happens that you have 7,000 rand on the basic, and you have an additional excess of 3,500 for instances such as, say, maybe your vehicle got into an accident while driven by someone else whose license is less than 3 years old, then there might be an additional excess of 3,500 rand. So this means that should it happen that you get into an incident in that specific condition, which is an irregular incident condition, that means that your excess will be 10,500 rand, because of they'll add the basic, which is due, as well as the additional, which is triggered by the type of loss that you had. And the same thing apply in percentage. There might be percentage plus the fix, or there might be percentage plus the percentage. So let's look at the example whereby they say an additional excess, your additional excess was 5%. So that means you will pay 8,000 rand, which is the 10% of your total loss from the basic, and they will add another 5%, which is 4,000 rand, 5% of the same loss. Therefore, it means that your total excess will be 12,500. And we found sometimes most of clients are confused to say, but my excess is about 7,000 rand. Why am I paying, or am expected to pay 10,500 rand? So that's additional excesses. On the other hand, now, punitive excesses often replaces the basic excess. Punitive excesses might not necessarily be named as punitive in your policy schedule, but it's actually an excess that exists to make sure that they put certain penalties to prevent clients to go over and above and be negligent or reckless. So that one, it works almost like additional, but the difference between the two is that the other one adds to, whereas the other one replaces. And this means that because if it replaces the basic excess, it's likely going to be more. And it's also always triggered by one thing: the extensional covers. Extensional covers are covers that are normally not covered by your basic type of cover, but they are covered. There are conditions that are put to make sure that your cover go over and above to extend to include certain things that a basic cover wouldn't include. But for them, the insurer, to include that, they will put punitive excesses to make sure that you also not utilize that to your benefit, but actually you make sure that you don't become reckless and you become responsible. If you need more information on extensions so that you can learn more about that, please follow. There's a clip also that we did where we speak more into details about extensions. Click on that. It's just a short clip that explains the difference between type of exclusions, extensions, and exceptions. Now, when it comes to punitive, the example is very simple. Let's look at the basic that is applied as well as the basic that is applied under the percentage. This means that they might add in a punitive of, say, let's say 12,000 rand for instance. Therefore, instead of your basic excess being 7, it will change to be 12. So it replaces, it doesn't add. And then on the percentage side, they might say, if it happens that under specific extensions, you meet the extension and you claim under that extension, therefore your excess will now change from being the basic of 10 to a punitive of 20. Therefore, your excess will be 16,000 rand. So the difference between these two, additional and punitive, is that the other one adds to, the other one normally replaces. However, it might be used interchangeably because you might find additional be regarded as punitive and vice versa. So now that we understand the different type of excesses, let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of the type of excess values. I'll start with the percentage type of excess. So the disadvantage is that the lower claims value are equals to lesser claim excess, meaning the lesser you claim in terms of the value, the lesser you're likely going to pay. However, we do know there is a minimum, but that's also another disadvantage because of the percentage excess might make you to be paying something that an amount that would likely be a little bit lower than the amount that you pay under a fixed excess. Whereas with the fixed excess, it doesn't change. The other advantage then when it comes to the fixed excess is that you will never pay anything higher than what is being stipulated. So whatever that's going to be pre-agreed, it's exactly what it's going to be due, nothing less, but also the advantage is that nothing more. And then it's easy to budget for. Where else, when it comes to the percentage excess, you cannot necessarily budget for that because it will need you first to adhere to what the insurer is saying insofar as the assessment, and once until they say your loss is equivalent to this amount, only then can you be able to detect how much is going to be due for excess. Advantages on the percentage is that it's not favorable for higher loss. It's straightforward. The higher the loss, that means the higher the value, and also is that there are often a minimum that is also payable. So meaning that even though you might have a lesser or lower claim, at the end of the day, there's a specific amount that you will never pay lower than. That's a disadvantage of the percentage one. But also the sad part is that it's not easy to budget for. And then when it comes to the fixed one is that you will never pay anything lesser than what is predetermined. If you need a recommendation or an advice on your policy specifically, please contact us directly. However, this video does not constitute any advice or recommendation. It was just a generic information that we share to the public. Stay tuned for more. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. If you have any questions, please pop them on the comment section. I'll be able to share and also elaborate more. Thank you so much.